My heart, the astronaut. My heart, the astronaut, wants to go to the moon. Her love began that first night she slept alone in her own room. She felt herself become no one's shadow, and she was terrified to disappear in the morning. Until she had seen the moon outside her window, and she forgot about shadows altogether. This was also how she learned to miscalculate distance. I've been telling her, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I researched astronaut requirements online and there's no way I'm getting into NASA. I swear. But she keeps acting like she doesn't know me. I overeat. I'm claustrophobic. I'm deathly afraid of heights. I don't even know how to drive a car, much more a space shuttle. But my heart, the astronaut, and I are different. She insists that it's not too far away, that I'm the only thing pulling them apart, not gravity. I turn my back on the moon. I try to close my eyes and breathe convincingly without a helmet. I drown my heart's attempts for liftoff, so it pounds in my chest in the dark of it. And I tell her to keep quiet. I hope someday she can forgive me.
One of the most amazing things that I remember about my childhood is my mother reading me bedtime stories. She would have the windows wide open and the stars were bright most nights. She would read me stories like Aladdin, Pinocchio, The Little Mermaid. But there was this one particular story that traumatized me on so many levels because it caught me off guard. If you look at this cover of Bambi, it's so cute, it's so charming, it's so child-friendly and non-threatening. But, plot twist, Bambi's mother dies in the story. And as a little girl who loved her mother severely and was very attached to her, I just couldn't bear the thought. So, niligid ko sa sound. Unya, nihila ko maayo. And my mother, she tried to comfort me. But I was really inconsolable. And this was the first time that a fictional character broke my heart. My father, he also read me stories, but he was different from my mother. Kay si Papa, maayo kay siya mo acting. So sometimes he would pretend like he was the mouse, or the evil stepsister, or the evil stepmother. He would even play Cinderella. So when I was a little girl, lingaw kaayo ko, nga maminaw niya. But the thing with my father is that dili pa kay siya maabot sa tunga-tunga sa libro, he would immediately pretend to be fast asleep. Kunya, pahubog-habog siya, kusog kaayo. So, the thing is, this is also the first time that I grew afraid that what if I never learned how to read for myself? Because being in kindergarten, it seemed as though it was the most complicated thing to turn the letters into words and the words into sentences. Obviously, I do know how to read now, but the thing is, books, the sentences now have formed meaning, and books, they have kept me company all this time. Books taught me how to be alone. It taught me to enjoy the silence. It taught me that silence does not necessarily mean emptiness. That silence does not mean quiet. That silence is not the lack of something. It's like giving J.K. Rowling a brick wall and she sees behind it the school of Hogwarts witchcraft and wizardry. I felt like Alice in Wonderland. It's a story about a girl living a very ordinary life. And then suddenly, she sees a rabbit, follows the rabbit, falls into the rabbit hole and into this world where talking cats exist and food could turn you into a very tiny human being and magic is everywhere. And then she returns to her reality, but somehow she is unable to see things ordinarily because she is forever affected by her wonderland. Books, for me, they are my wonderland, and books introduced me to poetry, and I'm forever grateful. So what is poetry? Poetry begins in the earliest part of our childhood. That is when we ask questions like, Ma, ngayon gisundan di ay ta sa buwan? Or the first time you were ever fascinated with a caterpillar? Or the first time that we've seen fireworks and we're confused whether we should be afraid of it or we should find it very beautiful. Poetry dares us to look for more than our eyes see. It dares us to imagine. It dares us to have a keen new sense of the world around us. Poetry, it never originated from paper. Poetry is not just in poems. Poetry is actually everywhere. It is in this world. It is in the people that you meet. It is in your experiences. It is so inspiring that it will poets to write it down. It is basically responding to things that are most beautiful to us. There's a poem entitled Bonsai by Edith Tiampo, and a line there goes, "A feat this heart's control, moment to scale all love down to a cupped hand's size." When we read that, it seems as though we don't understand it. But here's the thing. Edith Tiampo says, sometimes when we think of love, we think of it as this huge, sturdy tree. But what if we shrink this tree into the size of a bonsai? Is it any less of a tree? We want love to be spectacular. We want it to be full of fireworks and rows of roses. We want it to sparkle. But Edith Tiampo tells us that love can also be found in the smallest of objects. That it could be tangible, that it doesn't have to be abstract, that it could even happen in the most mundane days, and it could be much easier to understand. Love could be your mother making you breakfast so early in the morning. It could be your father driving you to school. It could be your friends giving you the last piece of chocolate. And doesn't that beat Hollywood any day? Okay, who here likes to say char? I'm guilty myself because it's a very popular Cebuano lingo, but there is a danger to char. Example, you tell your friend, "Bye, hibaw ka. Sakit kaya gibuhat na po. Yan siya po, di pa kawawan." And then your friend says, char. Immediately, you'd feel that you should be ashamed of your sadness. So what do? You hide away all of those bad emotions and you would rather fool yourselves into laughing and pretending that you're happy. So you would rather have shallow conversations than go deeper. Or it could also work the other way around. You could tell your friend, "Hibaw ka bay? Proud kaayo ko nimo, and I really appreciate you." Haha, char. Why are we afraid of sincerity? Why are we afraid of letting know how we really feel and what we really mean? Why are we so afraid to be vulnerable? I mean, do we really know who we are when we're angry? Do we know who we are when we're sad or depressed or lonely? I know that these are negative emotions, but just because they are negative, it does not mean that they are unnecessary. In fact, they are very relevant because they help us learn, they make us grow, they make us braver, they make us stronger. They remind us that as a human being, we are not indestructible, that we feel, and that we are also weak. There has to be an extensive use of the heart. There has to be the fullest capacity of human feeling. Poetry dares us to feel the best that we can. It dares us not to dismiss our emotions. It dares us not to say char and to avoid the convenience of char. Sometimes we also say the same things over and over again that they have the tendency to lose their meaning. Like the first time we hear an "I love you," it seems as though nothing could ever sound as sweet. But then, What if we repeatedly say it? I love you sa buntag. I love you sa udto. I love you in snacks. I love you in kapadungto times 1 year. Do you still feel the same way, the way that you did the first time you heard it? Probably not. But the beautiful thing with poetry is that you're able to say the same things over and over again, but still make it feel like it's the first time. Bobby Calderon, he wrote the poem, Kung Mapunan Man ang Mga Letra. Gahapon, gipangutana ko nimo kung tambok na tayo ka. Kung musulti ko sa tinuod, masakitan ka. Kung mulimod ko, muingon ka nga namakak ko. Mao kini ang akong tubag. Sa pagkataas na sa panahon nga ana ako sa imong kiliran, saksi ko sa pagsubay nimo sa XL. Ug kung madungagan pa ang mga letra sa umaabot nga mga adlaw, ani ara gihapon ko sa imong kiliran, ug kana di na kinahanglan ipangutana pa. In that poem, there is nothing there written, gihigugma takaday, love takaday, but it's very much a love poem. And it tells us that with poetry, there is always a new way to make someone feel something. I try to live my life with the intensity of every poet that I have ever read. When I am confused, I go to bookstores to look for my answers there. And I may never find my answers, but I am comforted with the thought that I am not alone, and that these books are a proof of someone's survival somewhere. When I am unkind to myself, I listen to spoken word poets about a girl whose thighs do not know what a thigh gap is, or about another girl sending postcards, or about a guy who is suffering from OCD and heartbreak. And this is what I've learned, that although we are extremely fragile creatures, one of the most courageous things that we can do is to allow brokenness, to accept our flaws and love ourselves, not despite it, but because of it. People have an innate hunger for something beautiful. We never grow out of it. That's why we read books, why we read poetry, why we watch movies, why we listen to music, why we travel and go on our personal adventures. And yes, poetry, it rarely puts food on the table. Poetry does not stand between you and a bullet. And poetry does not vote the right person for you this election. But here's what I say. Poetry keeps humanity from starving. It reminds us of what is meaningful, why we are alive, rather than just existing, to exist more. And it also reminds us that poetry, it unravels violence and it fights for peace. And it keeps telling us that we have a choice. We desperately need poetry in this society. Poetry dares us to give meaning. It dares us to have something that we cannot afford to lose. If it is love, if it's a person, if it's your family, your friends, your passion, your ambition, as long as you know that it's something worth holding on to, then you have to pursue it. You have to chase after it. A friend once asked me if I ever get exhausted, always looking for meaning in everything. And honestly, it does get kind of tiring, trying to get people interested with metaphors. And the heart shouldn't be paranoid all the time. But it's like looking out into the world and seeing with two different eyes. The first eye belongs to a child who sees everything pure and everything is new for the first time, and she believes in all the possibilities and the potential that she holds. While the other eye has grown up, has been hurt, has been broken, has not learned to forgive and forget, but has survived. But the thing with poetry is that I know I can easily get hurt, and I know that I overthink a lot, but I also know that I am able to feel the most joy that I can, that I am experiencing the world for all that it is and all that it should be. Poetry can be a difficult friend, but first of all, it is a friend. Life can be beautiful and ugly, and that could actually happen at the same time. But appreciate it, embrace your own humanity, and embrace your own weakness. Let us not be the generation to forget the stars. Let us not keep building super malls and forget about our library. Let us not have awkward silences with the universe because we would rather be checking our phones. Let us remember that every moment, it can be a poem, and that everyone is a poet. Let's see, let's feel, let's create significance, wake up, read poetry. Let us be a good story to tell. I dare you. Thank you.